Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistic professor gives you sports betting tips. This is Major League Baseball for Friday, May 17th. Wednesday's recap on screen. As I mentioned yesterday, kind of just continuing a very ho-hum week where it seems like all the one-run games are just going against us. It's already happened again on Thursday. We're recording this Thursday afternoon. There aren't many games on Thursday. We had the first drive over in Yankees and the Twins. 3 runs in the first inning and then 4.5 runs at the top of the first inning and 4.5 innings of nothing. And, that's the sort of thing that, when you get those 3-run first like that in the first 5 over, you're going to get that more times than not. And we just couldn't quite get there here on Thursday. And so those are just part of the ups and downs. But in general, again, overall, very pleased with where things are despite kind of a frustrating week. We're still losing less than we won last week. And so when everything's going wrong, and you're losing less than what you're winning, that's a good thing because everything will go wrong forever. And so, again, if you're looking to be part of that turnaround here, you can join us over on Dub Club and get all of these picks here, the model recap in general. Again, nothing overall to really report. First 5 still strong. Full games, again, I think slowly but surely continuing to trend to better. B grade thresholds are the model's strongest play. The designated A grade are the handful of picks that are the best of all the B grades. If you're interested in joining us on Dub Club, sign up for the honor roll package today and get the Discord chat, more picks, all the A grades play today, summarization of game predictions, information, details in chart form and word form, all sorts of goodies. And if you're interested, there is a discounted play of the day only package that is also available. You can check that out with the link in the show description. And then a quick reminder here before we get started into the game, some information about the model and the community rules, pickswiththeprofessor.com/new. Weather is subject to change. We are about 24 hours away or more from first pitch from all these games. And so I'll kind of note where some wind shifts could matter and where they might not matter. We're predicting an average game. Who knows what will happen in one game? Anything can happen in sports in 1, 2, 3 games. And so that's why we look at the big picture. I give the example that 55% winners should win 9 out of 20 times. And of course, it's not even really 9 out of 20. It's more 90 out of 200, right? We are talking long term. There are a lot of games in baseball. In the long run, we will be making a lot of bets. On any one night, any 1 week, anything can happen. But in the long run, as long as we're making good bets because we have good prices and or good numbers, that's what leads us to slow and steady overall profits through the micro ups and downs. But as always, take what you like and leave the rest. Last but not least, if you could like the show, we would like that. 1 day game for us here on Friday afternoon, 2:20 p.m. Eastern. Pirates and the Cubs, low 60s. Looks like the wind will be blowing in at almost 10 miles an hour, which would create a fairly pitcher-friendly environment here in Chicago for this one. No total market out yet. Again, as always, the books like to wait as long as possible for posting a total because this is one that can move the most based off of weather changes. And being this far out, there still is some uncertainty exactly as to what will happen weather-wise. The temperature we know shouldn't be too far off. It's really the wind strength and direction. But given what we're talking about here, I feel fairly confident this will be pitcher-friendly. Might be a little bit more, a little bit less based off a couple of different factors, but in general, it's going to be a fairly pitcher-friendly day. Paul Skeens and Kyle Hendricks. Skeens looked great and then kind of fell apart in his first start. Overall grades out of the 102. Better than his first start. There were some positive signs. His xFIPS stayed below 3. It was only 4+ innings. But the biggest thing with him, of course, and I mentioned in his first start, is going to be the duration. How deep can he go? / how deep are the Pirates going to let him go? That's the other big thing. He can throw more, but they're going to definitely treat him with kid gloves with all the injuries in baseball and the big investment they've got him, and the fact that he has a chance to be a generational type pitcher. So that's just kind of the big asterisk behind him. One of the things that's going to keep him back is that part of that grade is how deep he goes. He's grading out now better than league average on a per inning basis, and he was slightly below average entering his last start after 1. Again, the underlying metrics were fairly solid in that start, despite him blowing up in the 5th inning. Underlying metrics were pretty solid for him, and so after that, he's gone from slightly below average to slightly above average on a per inning grade. It's just that the duration of how long he's going to go is still not a very, rosy picture there based off of what he's done in the past and how long they're going to let him go. So it's a little bit him, but and he can get into some trouble with some high pitch counts, of course, but it's probably more the Pirates management, to be completely honest. Other than that, Kyle Hendricks, we are not huge fans of. He had a good start, I believe, his last time out, maybe his best start on the road of his career. He does tend to do better at home on average. Most pitchers do. I wouldn't make too much of it. At this point, we still aren't Kyle Hendricks fans, despite that really good start he had last time out. Or I believe it was at least at the start of the game. Maybe things fell apart for him too. I can't keep it all straight. But again, in his 6 outings this year, he's not as bad as that 10 ERA, but his FIP's in the low 7s, his xFIP's in the mid 4s. He projects in the mid upper 4s. Hendricks is not a very good pitcher. Bullpen is also, of course, going to go to the Pirates. The biggest thing for the Cubs in this one, I've mentioned this before, is what are they going to do with Ben Brown, who's, again, a very good pitcher. If they're using him out of the pen in more high leverage spots, I think that can make a lot of sense. If they're using him as the mop-up guy, I think that can kind of make sense in a game where maybe, this is 3-3 in the third and Hendricks is struggling. They bring Brown in to pitch 3 or 4 innings. Unfortunately, if they're using the mop-up spot where they're down 7-0, that doesn't make a lot of sense at all. So that's kind of my big question, because that's the lurking variable behind all this for the Cubs, is that Ben Brown being in the bullpen, as, again, a pitcher that I'm pretty high on. Most teams don't have guys like that who can go multiple innings and are good. If they're good and they can go multiple innings, they're usually starting. If they can go multiple innings and they're not good, they're usually just a long relief guy. Doesn't matter. Or if they can't go to multiple innings, they're usually just a back end guy. So I don't know what their plans with Brown. That's kind of the big asterisk. Otherwise, though, in general, we're a little bit higher on the Pirates than the market is, mainly because we're really down on Kyle Hendricks. I think that's where the big discrepancy comes from. So the market thinks that Hendricks is better and or he could do something at home. Maybe he can. I'm not a big home road splits guy, other than the extreme cases. Maybe there was an argument you could make a couple years ago that applied to Hendricks. I'm not really sure it holds true today in general. I'm just not a big fan of him. So we're the market shooting this is a 50-50 game. I think the Pirates are more than 50% likely to win it. We're not quite at that B grade threshold yet, but it is looking like Pirates or pass to me. Nats and the Phillies, around 70 degrees to start, cooling off into the low 60s to finish. Wind maybe out, maybe across. Probably not going to matter too much, though, as the wind speed's going to be more in the 5-ish mile an hour range. So probably not a huge deal. Jake Irvin and Zach Wheeler. When you do a show here and you talk about every single game 6 days a week, we miss Sundays. For those, you talk about a lot of the same guys. So I feel like it's a lot of rinse repeat for Jake Irvin. He's done great so far this year. His underlying metrics fully support that ERA. We talk about ERA is not a very good predictor in general, and or it can be misleading, and there are other predictors that are oftentimes more reliable and better. But then sometimes ERA is just a good job. There's no reason to use it because we have better tools. But if you are looking at ERA, it's something you see on the screen. His ERA is very real. There's no smoke and mirrors to it. His projection is still very poor because of previous seasons, and the model's turned over the high on him. But if he continues to pitch like this, the model's going to come around eventually. It's just trying to figure out when do you come around, how much do you overreact to this. At some point, you have to take notice. It's 8 starts, so I'm not ignoring it, but there is a question of how good can he be. He's been much better than anyone really would have thought coming into the season. So hats off to him. On the other hand, Zach Wheeler, in a virtual 3-way tie with another guy we're going to talk about later today for the best active pitcher in baseball, 2.53 ERA, underlying metrics align right with that. FIP and xFIP both under 3, which is pretty incredible as we're working into start number 10 for him. Phillies bullpen looks fantastic. Their offense, again, looking pretty solid. Of course, getting Trey Turner back helps, but they're likely going to be too much for the Nats to overcome. I think the Phillies win this 73% of the time. The market has them at 70%. We're a little bit higher on than that. But with big favorites, you have to be careful as to exactly what you're doing with this. It's Phillies or pass. Is it run line as the home team might be looking more -1? That's still pretty steep odds. Is it money line parlay? How are you playing this one, of course, is up to you. We do have an official recommendation for that over on Dub Club if you're interested. But in one way, shape, or form, I think the Phillies make a lot of sense here. Even if Jake Irvin is as good as he's been so far this season, the Nats offense is not very good, and Zach Wheeler is really dominant. And the model thinks that the Phillies win this more than the market does, so that makes them the side I would rather be on. Total-wise, we might be a little bit leaning over, but there's really no way you could talk me into playing over 7.5. First off, is a gross number to go over, but then second off, given Zach Wheeler, given the Nats offense, who I don't trust, given both these bullpens grade out better than average, given the fact that Jake Irvin might be better than the model realizes, I don't think I would be touching this total at all. Mariners and the Orioles, low 60s for this one. Wind will be blowing a little bit across, about 5 miles an hour. Cooler temperature, more pitcher-friendly ballpark. It's going to make for a run-suppressing environment. Bryce Miller and John Means. Miller has a 2.66 ERA in his 8 starts this season. FIP and XFIP both more in the threes. Projects a little bit worse based off of what we saw from him last season, but definitely moving in the right direction and one more good start away from becoming what Southern would consider an above-average pitcher. While the grade isn't great, I have no problem backing him. He's looked really good so far this season. He's a young guy, and you do expect improvement. So definitely lots of optimism there. John Means very similar, but only 2 starts, but coming off the injuries rather than being such a young guy, definitely moving in the right direction here. FIP and XFIP look solid so far in his 11 2/3 innings. The overall projection still lags a little bit because of his struggles before. A part of that was dealing with injury. We can't ignore that, but we also know that at some point the model will be adjusting quicker on him than other guys. And it's only 2 starts. We don't overreact. But again, so far, so good. 2 pitchers who have looked really good. And again, you have no qualms backing. The Mariners bullpen lags a little bit behind the Orioles with regards to the depth, but the Mariners back-end guys actually grade out better than the backing guys for the Orioles. That kind of makes sense because the backing guy for the Orioles is Craig Kimbrell, who's at times dominant and at times dominant for the other team. And so you see the grade on screen. That's kind of the average overall weighting to the back guys, but still considering everybody. But if you talk about depth, the Orioles have the advantage there. If you talk about just holding a lead, the Mariners actually have a slightly better bullpen according to the model. Orioles will have a big edge on offense. They're at home, and that's the reason they're 58% favorites to win this game according to Sideline. No line out on this one yet, as we have not confirmed if it's John Means or not. We have confirmed Bryce Miller, so just waiting for the other half of this equation in order to see if there is any good value backing either side based on the Orioles winning 58% at the time. White Sox and the Yankees. Low 60s to start, upper 50s to close. A slight breeze blowing in, might be a little more across. Not going to be strong enough to really matter, but yet another pitcher-friendly environment. We are into May, and this is where we're going to start seeing some more hitter-friendly games. We're going to still see some pitcher-friendly nights, and so far it looks like that's going to be the case here on this Friday night in May. Mike Clevinger and Nestor Cortez. Clevinger needs all the help he can get. 5.40 ERA, only 2 starts, but the underlying metrics line up with that. His projection based off previous seasons, not very good. Not a very good starting pitcher whatsoever. Nestor Cortez, on the other hand, very average, 4.02 ERA, xFIP right around that. FIP's a little bit better. Very solid pitcher, no complaints, run-of-the-mill, kind of know what you're doing. Another guy who tends to do a little bit better at home. Most pitchers do. The biggest difference, of course, here is while the Yankees have an edge starting pitcher, the edge in the bullpen is pretty big, and the edge on offense is monumental. The Yankees are big favorites in this one. They should be. The only question is, should they be favored by more? This and the Phillies, I think, are a great example of a situation where I record this here on the afternoon before the games, and I send all this information out to Dub Club before I even hit the record button. So all of this has already been sent out. We would have a slight lean to the Yankees here, as you can see on screen. We've got 72%. The market's got 69%. You can get minus 247. That's not quite to the B grade threshold, minus 232, but it's better than what the price should be according to the model, even if you take out the juice. So you could see a slight edge on the Yankees here. But my point is that we send this out to Dub Club in the afternoon before, real early, right as lines are coming out, so that everyone has kind of an awareness, like a heads up. You get the automated alert. In general, my hunch, what I typically see with this is that by the time you get closer to game time, you're not going to be able to get minus 250 in the Yankees. It's probably going to be more like minus 275. And that's probably a pretty accurate price when you add the juice in. And so that extra 25 cents, that sort of stuff matters. That's why being on Dub Club can help. It can help you save money by winning more, by getting better prices, losing less because we're going to lose some, right? And so it's a great benefit of being over there because a lot of these favorites, the price goes up. And we're going to talk later about some favorites that I don't think the price should be that high. So just making sure you get in on a favorite early, knowing the price might go up, which ones to do that, which ones not to, which ones, and we're going to talk later about one that we just say, no, there's no reason to jump this early. Right. And so if you're watching this here on Friday morning and the Yankees price is already out to minus, and maybe it sometimes goes the other way on occasion, you never know, right? If the Yankees price drops to minus 230, great, hey, fire away. But if you're watching this Friday, Friday mid-morning, Friday at your lunch break or whatever, and it's, Yankees minus, 280 or something, you say, well, 15 hours earlier, 20 hours earlier, if you're with us on No Club, you'd got a notification there's a slight value on the Yankees, and you could have said, hey, slight value on a big favorite. The number's probably going to go up. Let's go ahead and jump on this now. by the time you're watching it, all the value's gone. So reasons to be on Dump Club, getting that information ahead of time, knowing which favorites to jump on early, which ones not to. Again, we've got a couple later that we're going to say not, but the Yankees and the Phillies, both these early games here, two teams that should be big favorites, but in fact, I think the line could actually be a little bit higher than it is because they are actually a slightly more likely to win than the market realizes. My hunch is the run line value on both the Yankees and the Phillies. The run line market hasn't been established yet, not really out of a bunch of places. My hunch is that it's going to be a little bit less value because everyone's going to be afraid to lay a big price. The only people putting that big price are going to be putting it in massive team parlays. The books don't tend to consider that as much. And so the going to have more money on the run line. That's probably going to zap a little bit of the value out of it quicker than the money line. So not to say you shouldn't play the run line, but just kind of keep that in note that it's not always as easy as just going to the run line because those probabilities may not align depending on where the value is. And I see that often in baseball and hockey both, where a big favorite might have a little bit of value in the money line, but there's really no value on the run line or the puck line in that sport because everybody's on it. And that kind of, changes the market dynamic a little bit. So you get all those probabilities, all that information available on Double Club, links in the show description if you want all that information. Rays and the Blue Jays, 7:07 p.m. Eastern, first pitch. Around 60 degrees for this game. Roof should be closed in Toronto. Tyler Alexander and Chris Bassett. Alexander, 5.45 ERA, FIP right in line with that. XFIP a little bit better, does not project to do very well. And of note, again, the Blue Jays still a very right-handed heavy team, and so the Rays throwing a lefty at them does bode well for the Blue Jays. Chris Bassett, 5.06 ERA. He's better than that by a little bit. The results haven't quite been there, but his underlying metrics paint a very meh picture. Not that he's good, but he's average. So there might be a little bit of value also backing the Blue Jays in the fact that Chris Bassett is not as bad as that ERA. He's not great, but he's just very respectable. This Rays offense, the model still believes in, but again, very similar to the Blue Jays. Both of these offenses have struggled at times and are so right-handed heavy. They really rely on facing lefties. Otherwise, against righties, they look very pedestrian and either average or even below average at times. Model doesn't care for either one of these bullpens either. So that's going to set us up for a game that might have a few extra runs than would normally be expected in a park that's become slightly more pitcher-friendly over the years after they've made some dimension adjustments to it. Tampa Bay has not declared their starter yet, so if it's someone other than Tyler Alexander, especially if it's a righty, that makes a big difference. So TBD on this one, as we don't know who the Rays are going with, but if it is Alexander, the model says the Blue Jays win this 62% of the time. But again, I cannot understate just how big of a difference the starting pitcher gap is, and the handedness of the starting pitcher impacts that as well. Mets and the Marlins, 7 p.m. Eastern. Christian Scott and Jesus Luzardo. Scott's looked really good in his two starts so far. Shiny ERA, FIP right there with it. XFIP slightly higher. Projects a tiny bit worse because we're not going to overreact too much to his two starts, but it's been two really good starts for a guy who's very experienced, old enough coming out of AAA that he should be able to be pretty good here at the major league level. So fairly high on him. I think the sky's the limit for this guy in how good he can be, right off the bat. You see, I'm not going to, he's not going to get to like Zach Wheeler level, but so far so good. I think he could have a pretty good season. I don't think there's any reason to think he's necessarily going to struggle. And he shouldn't struggle here on Friday night against the Marlins' putrid offense. Jesus Luzardo has had some struggles this year, maybe looking a little bit better now going forward. His XFIP's now crawled below 4, so there is some reason for optimism from him, but we are scaling back a little bit of optimism from at the start of the season because so far, even though he's had some injury, the results just haven't quite been there. This is a game that we are really in line with the market. The market says Mets win 53% of the time. The model's got it at 52%. So I would say there's really no edge here. The model might be slightly on the over. Again, I hate going over a number like 7.5, so it's not exciting at all. But the model says maybe a little bit on the over just because, Christian Scott's a young guy. He might get hit around a little bit. Luzardo's been kind of hit or miss. But in general, I don't think I like the over that much. I think the books are kind of overreacting to this under, but sometimes overreacting makes a lot of sense. And what I mean by that is the Marlins offense isn't good. Their bullpen, when you look underneath the hood, it's not great, but it's not terrible either, even though that's been kind of some of their problem. The Mets have a decent enough bullpen. There's just enough here that The total probably should be 8, and they're putting it at 7.5, daring you to go over. And it's like, I don't think I can do it. Like they're putting it at a spot that they know it's going to be really tough because there's just not a lot to give you confidence. I think there's going to be a lot of runs in this game. And so I think everything's priced fairly well in here. It's pretty close to how I would have it if you put me in charge of a sports book. And so for me, it's looking like a pass. Maybe there's a first 5 opportunity, and all the first 5 picks are available over on Dub Club. But until those markets are out, can't speak to them. So full game wise, though, at least unless something changes, nothing really looking great there. Twins and the Guardians. For the first time, I remember to make the font smaller for Simeon Woods Richardson, who continues to impress. 3.24 ERA in his 5 starts. FIP better than that. XFIP in the upper 3s. Again, like everything I've seen from him, Tristan McKenzie is a very interesting case. His ERA is down to 3.54, but his XFIP still in the low 5s. So it's like he was starting off concerning. The velocity was down, and there was some injury talk and whatnot, but he's had some decent results. I don't know what to make of him. Tristan McKenzie is definitely one of the bigger wild cards, I feel like, of all starting pitchers right now, and I have no idea what's going on. We've seen, though, early on, the Twins were winning a ton of games, and people were talking about how this Twins offense was so good, and we saw it with the Guardians as well, but there was a reason the model never really put either one of these offenses in the top 10, and it's what I'm constantly talking about, is that we can't overreact to some small sample size stuff. We saw it here on Thursday. The Twins get shut out against the Yankees after a pretty weak offensive performance the night before. I think they only got 1 run as well. It's not that they're a bad offense. It's that, while both of these offenses have gotten hot, both of them can disappear. Both of them aren't necessarily quite as good. That's why we have the model to help us understand that and not overreact. And so you can see both of these teams offensively grade out pretty around league average. The Guardians are a little bit left-handed heavy, so they get a little bit of a bump from that. Facing a righty, it's decent offenses, but they've definitely had moments this year where they've looked better than that. But they've also, you can kind of see why the model isn't overreacting to them. So decent offenses for sure. 2 decent enough starting pitchers. The key to this game, in my opinion, is the bullpens. Both these bullpens are incredibly good. They're both incredibly deep. The Guardians are the best bullpen in baseball, according to Sideline. And that helps Tristan McKenzie, in my mind, at least alleviate some of the concerns I have with him, because the model realizes that, knows that strong bullpen's behind him, and gives him a little bit more of a shorter leash because of that. It says if he starts to struggle, there's arms they can go to. If you put the same Tristan McKenzie on a team with a terrible bullpen, the Padres we'll talk about next, the projection wouldn't be quite the same, because it would kind of be more of a, well, we've got to let someone go. Either he's going to struggle or the bullpen's going to struggle. But the Guardians bullpen's good enough for that. It shouldn't be as big of a deal. And it's because of that we're really in lockstep with the market. Both the market and the model have the Guardians winning 54% of the time. The market on this one for the total is 8. We're projecting a little bit less than that. Again, not maybe as much faith in these offenses as the what's been talked about. And again, 2 bullpens that you really have to love. Padres and the Braves are on 70 degrees for this one. Slight breeze in about 5 to 10 miles per hour. Matt Waldron and Max Fried. Waldron, not good. 5.49 ERA. The underlying metrics paint a slightly rosier picture than that, but again, he's towards the bottom of the starting pitcher ratings in Sideline. Max Fried, on the other hand, up to number 6 after that first start or 2 where he struggled. Looking, again, like a very strong, consistent pitcher. Part of that good grade is the fact that he's able to go deeper into games. He's a guy that, on average, is going to go a lot of innings. So far this season, he's averaging almost 6 innings a start, and that's pretty incredible, because his first start, he didn't make it out of the first inning, and then his second start, I think things got blown up as well, and he didn't go very far. So when you take those 2 out, he's averaging close to 7 innings a start. That's part of why his grade is a little bit higher there, is that every extra inning he can pitch means 1 less reliever, 1 less little bit of variance, and that really matters. So Max Fried, very good pitcher, and the fact that he can go deep can really matter a lot. Matters maybe a little bit less on this Braves team, who already has a really good bullpen. That's what the Padres need, because their bullpen isn't very good. Both these offenses grade out really well. The Padres offense has been a little bit hit or miss, coming off of a series against the Rockies where they just couldn't do anything. Part of that's the field, part of that's just the variance. I wouldn't overreact to it. This Padres offense is still good. That said, the Braves should be overwhelming favorites in this game, and even more so than the market thinks. The market's got the Braves winning this 2 out of 3 times, whereas the model has the Braves winning 7 out of 10. So it's Braves or pass one way or the other. Again, as I mentioned before, we do have an official recommendation over on Dub Club as to exactly how to play this game. If you're looking for that, sign up link in the show description. Otherwise, I will, again, leave you with Braves in one way, shape, or form, whether it's first 5 full game run line, hybrid, whatever you're looking at. It's Braves or nothing for me on this one. Again, the total's priced pretty accurately. A's and the Royals, going to start off fairly warm in Kauffman for this one. Mid to upper 70s, going to close around 70 degrees. Wind blowing slightly in, slightly across, 5 to 10 miles an hour. She's going to make things kind of balance out with that slightly warmer start temperature, slightly warmer again for what we've been seeing. Still should play like a fairly hitter-friendly ballpark. Not going to have too much of a weather adjustment. Kyle Muller for the A's against Cole Reagans for the Royals. We've not confirmed if it's Muller. I don't know who in the world it would be otherwise. The A's are like, they got a lot of guys hurt. They brought guys up, and then those guys have got hurt. So I don't know who it might be if it's not him. And if it is Kyle Muller, just very meh. He's been out of the pen this season so far, thrown 28 innings. So he could go, 3-4 innings probably. Eating up enough innings, been part of this really good A's bullpen. I don't really know what else to say about this A's pen that we haven't already talked about. They're looking really good. They're anchored by one of the best relievers in baseball, Mason Miller. Offensively, they're struggling a little bit, but the model likes their offense better than the Royals offense that has really taken a downfall since that really hot start. We mentioned at the time that they probably weren't quite as good as they were looking, and sure enough, every game looks just a little bit worse where they struggle on offense, and we're seeing a ton of games where the Royals are putting up, 2 runs or so. Bobby Witt Jr. is incredible. Beyond that, they're really lacking for good offense. The biggest thing with the Royals and the way they're going to compete in the AL Central could be partially the weakness of the AL Central, even though it's looked strong so far. It's historically been pretty weak. But it's the starting pitching, and that starts with Cole Reagans, who's been much better than that 4.22 ERA. If you're down on him, if you start on him a little bit, especially if you're a fantasy player, because of his 4.22, I'm here to tell you, don't be worried about that. Again, ERA is not the best metric to use as a predictor. It assigns all runs to a pitcher or no runs to a pitcher, when in reality, it's a bit pitcher, bit fielder, bit park, bit weather, bit luck. All sorts of things matter into that, and by giving every run either to a pitcher or not is not really the best metric to use for prediction. When you look at the underlying metrics for Cole Reagans, he's been really good and actually better than his grade has been so far. So if he keeps pitching the way he's been pitching so far, his ERA will continue to come down. Eventually that will catch up. The grade's going to get better and better. Love Cole Reagans. He's been fantastic this season. Starting out the season, if y'all were here, y'all know I was saying, hey, let's not overreact too much to last year. Let's hold off. Let's just see. But I mean, so far, again, I'm not really concerned about the ERA. In my opinion, he's done everything he needs to solidify all the hype that he had coming into the season. I think he's a fantastic pitcher, and he's lived up to the hopes I think that you would have had of him coming in if you're a Royals fan. We've got this Royals team winning 56% of the time, assuming it is Kyle Muller. If it's someone else, I have to think the Royals probability just goes up, because I don't know who else it would be that would be better than this. Not that Muller's going to go deep necessarily, but he's going to be decent enough, and this A's bullpen's pretty solid. If they bring up someone from AAA, it's probably going to be a little bit worse, because that means they're going to be trying to eat innings up with someone who's not very good. So I think 56% of the Royals is probably the lower bound, but again, no line out to really discuss otherwise. Angels and the Rangers, mid to low 70s. Could open the roof in Arlington if they want to. Tyler Anderson and Andrew Heaney. Tyler Anderson, Drew Heaney. I guess we could put those names together like that. Pair of lefties here for the Angels and the Rangers. Anderson, 2.92 ERA, but it's all smoke and mirrors. It is going to come back on him eventually. I don't know when, but FIP in the mid-4s, xFIP near 5. If he continues to pitch like this, he's going to give up some runs at some point. Don't know when. Might not be here Friday. It might be later on. But at some point, when you look into the hood, it's concerning. There's always a handful of pitchers early on that is smoke and mirrors, and a handful of pitchers like Cole Reagans. And I'm telling you, hey, don't worry about the ERA. He's fine. Tyler Anderson's a guy I would be very concerned about. He's not actually as good as that ERA looks. Andrew Heaney, very meh. I think his ERA is pretty accurate. He's slightly subpar. He's not terrible. He's not good. Just kind of run of the mill. Rangers bullpen just kind of okay. This Rangers team just kind of looks average, and I think that's an interesting. I'm not going to say like subtext or whatever the ALS, but I mean the ALS looks very average. The Mariners might be the best team. The Rangers took a step back. The Astros, I think the Astros will be fine. We'll talk about them later, but they put themselves in such a big hole to start with all the starting pitching injuries. The Angels falling apart. The A's were a fun story for a while, and they've lost a ton lately. It's just a very average AL West, and I think it's led none other by this Rangers team, who's the defending World Series champion, and just doesn't really look great. They've had some injury issues as well, and of course, they're just trying to hang on until some of their good starting pitching comes back. But similar to the Astros, at some point, the clock's running out to really establish yourself as a top team. Of course, they put themselves in less of a hole than the Astros, which definitely helps them out, but they're still hovering around 500. And that's kind of, again, what the grades on screen show, just kind of run of the mill. Thankfully for them, they are at home, and they still are better than the Angels. We've got them winning the 65% of the time. The market says 62%. So it'd be Rangers or pass for us on this one. A couple of other notes I would say. Number one, as always with the Angels, anytime you're fading them, it's never a bad idea to do it first five. This should be anytime you're backing them, it's never a bad idea to do it first five. Anytime you're fading them, it's never a bad idea to go full game, because this Angels bullpen is not trustworthy whatsoever. And the thing is, the total on this is 9. Over could be enticing. Again, I don't really trust Tyler Anderson at all. Don't really trust either bullpen. I don't really trust either offense, but I think I trust the bullpens less than I trust the offenses. So Rangers full game might be a good look. Over might be a good look. You can kind of combine that, play at Rangers -1. A couple of different ways you can look at this. Again, if you're looking for more specific direction, we can talk more about this game over on Discord, which you can access our Discord chat exclusively through Dub Club link in the show description. Brewers and the Astros, 8:10 p.m. Eastern. Nice night in Houston, low 70s. Could open the roof if they decided to. Freddie Peralta and Hunter Brown. Peralta's been really good, 3.63 ERA. FIP and XFIP look really good. Very strong pitcher, one of the stronger pitchers in baseball. Nothing bad to say about him whatsoever. Hunter Brown, I'm going to say Hunter Brown is fine. He's been kind of a hot topic around here. A couple things to note. First off, we've done insanely well with the Astros this year. We were very happy to fade them for a long time when the market overestimated them, and we made a lot of money fading them. We backed them a little bit more recently, made a lot of money backing them as they've been winning a lot of games. We've done really well with our overs and unders. I don't necessarily think it's that I watch more of the Astros than anything else. I do, but we've done really well with them, and the model's done a good job of being very level-headed with the Astros, whereas I think the market has been all over the map and very confused. And I think that goes I think there's no better explanation than Hunter Brown, who does have an insanely terrible ERA, has gotten hit around a few times, does have a 395 xFIP. That's pretty good. Is it better than Freddie Peralta? No, absolutely not. Freddie Peralta is the better pitcher. Full stop. It's not even close. That said, Hunter Brown looked really good last year at the start of the season when he was fresh, wore down towards the end of the season. This year, already having a little bit of, ups and downs, working on some things. I was very concerned about him after his first couple starts, looking at the underlying metrics. And then right around then, looking at things, they started to get a little bit better and a little bit better. The exit velocity of balls that have been hit off him is dropping a lot. The walks are still there a little bit, and that's what's got to come down. But you saw he had a great long relief outing the other day that really helped save the bullpen. So he's been kind of a back and forth guy, kind of their 5th or 6th starting pitcher. I think he's going to be okay. I'm not saying he's as good as Freddie Peralta, but I think he'll be a very respectable starting pitcher. As you can see, the model still says that the Brewers have a massive starting pitching edge here. The Astros bullpen been preaching this. They'll be fine. They've been really good lately. I think they'll be okay. This Brewers bullpen grades out fairly well. Also, the biggest difference is this Brewers offense really can't be trusted. It's very up and down. This Astros offense is really good. The Astros are at home. I can't believe we're getting plus odds. This is our favorite, the wrong team favored game, and this is your free show A grade lock it in play of the day here. Astros plus 103. It is not to say that the Astros win this game, but they are probably slightly more likely to win it than lose it, and the fact that we're getting plus odds is an incredible get, even if the model is a little bit too high on someone like Hunter Brown. And again, remember, we still have him over a standard deviation worse than Freddie Peralta. Even if the model is a little bit too low on the Brewers offense, maybe this Astros win percentage isn't 55%, maybe it's only 53%, 52%. We still are in this wrong team favored game. And anytime we can get a team that should be slightly favored at plus odds, you have to lock it in. So this is your A grade free show play of the day here. Doesn't necessarily mean it wins. It just means the Astros at home should be probably slight favorites. And the fact that we're getting plus odds is a price we cannot pass up. Red Sox and Cardinals, 8:15 p.m. Eastern. First pitch, upper 60s for this one. Very, very slight breeze blowing out, but won't make much of a difference at all. Going to play slightly pitcher-friendly. according to the model. Brian Bayo and Kyle Gibson. Bayo with a 3.13 ERA. Underlying metrics, a little bit of a mixed bag, but very solid last year. The model's still pretty high on him. Kyle Gibson has done well this year so far with a 3.67 ERA, but the underlying metrics and previous season's data point to him being more of a subpar pitcher than anything. This is a big edge to the Red Sox at the starting pitcher spot. Otherwise, it's kind of interesting. I think every team in baseball, other than maybe like the Dodgers, maybe if you're a Braves fan, there might be another team out there or two that I'm forgetting about, but like most teams, I feel like are frustrated with their offenses. They don't think they're as good as they can be, and I think that's a great evidence of that is the Cardinals' offense here rates right in the middle, even though they've been terrible. The Red Sox offense rates top 15, not top 10, but top 15. They've been really hit or miss, and of course they're still a little bit banged up. But it's like, who else are you going to put there? Like the alternatives, the whole like whoever's like 8 through 20 is just like a mixed bag of meh. And so both of these offenses grade out in the slightly above average, but it's almost like on a comparison game of like no one's happy with their offense right now. I think the biggest thing here is that the pitching will have the advantage. A little bit because of the park/weather, a little bit because of Brian Bay, a little bit because of the relievers, and a lot because these offenses, I think, are more capable of taking care of bad pitching, bad relief pitching, and I don't really think they're going to see that. Again, the worst pitcher here is Kyle Gibson. He's not terrible. Of course, unfortunately for us, the market knows that, put the total at 8. Would love to go under 9 in a game like this with the name recognition of some of these offenses, but I think we've all kind of realized this Red Sox offense and this Cardinals offense, neither one of them are top 10 offenses. And so, unfortunately, we aren't going to be able to go under a number like 9. We do have a wrong team favored situation. We do have the Red Sox winning 51% of the time, but it's so slightly wrong team favored, 51% to 49%, that you can see the market price of even money is still almost 10 cents away from the B grade play. So it's only a wrong team favored game based off where it falls in the spectrum, but we are not to that B grade threshold. If we were, the Red Sox would be a good play here. It's Red Sox or pass, but the price isn't amazing. Definitely better to wait and see maybe the run line offers of somebody, maybe the first 5. Full update with full set of recommendations and discussion on this game coming in the morning for everyone on Dub Club. Again, as always, link in the show description. Tigers and the Diamondbacks to the late set of games here, 9:40 p.m. Eastern. Hot one in Arizona, low 90s. Should have the roof closed. Tariq Skubal, another one of those guys, as I mentioned, with Zach Wheeler in a virtual tie. The other one being Tyler Glasnow for those 3 guys. For best active starting pitcher in baseball. All 3 of them look fantastic. 2.02 ERA for Skubal. FIP, literally the same xFIP, half a run higher. Fantastic. Just nothing else to add. No notes. Love that dude. Ryan Nelson, 5.33 ERA. Underlying metrics say it's a little bit better than that. He's pitched maybe a little better than his projection, maybe more like an upper 1-teens pitcher, but either way you look at it, it's not good. And this is one of the biggest starting pitcher discrepancies that you could possibly see. Here's the issue is that the Diamondbacks offense is better. The Tigers bullpen, the model doesn't really believe in. The Tigers are on the road. So as much as there's a massive starting pitcher discrepancy, it's hard to see how the Tigers are favored by this much. They are favored. They should be favored. We've got them winning 55% of the time. The market says 57%. I think that's a tad high. Here's my take on it, though. I'm not fading Skubal unless the value is incredible, and the Diamondbacks value is not there right now. So unless the Diamondbacks price gets up to something like plus 150, then at that point, maybe we're looking run line. Maybe we're looking first 5. I'm not really sure. But the bottom line is I only want to fade Skubal if there's great value. I'd love to back them. I just don't think there's good value in this price. And that's why we have the model to help us figure out, is this a game where the Tigers should be favored to win 55% of the time or 60% of the time, but the market having 57? The answer was 60. Tigers look like a great play. We've got it at 55. Kind of a pass to me, in my opinion. Market total really close to the model total. Reds and Dodgers, 10 p.m. Eastern, upper 50s, slight breeze out, maybe across. Going to play slightly pitcher friendly there. Frankie Montas and James Paxton. Paxton, all smoke and mirrors, 2.58 ERA, but the underlying metrics paint a much worse pitcher. In fact, he's one of the worst xFIPs in baseball for this many innings. If he continues to pitch like this, he will give up some runs at some point. Now, he does play in a slightly pitcher friendly park / if it's a night game here until we get to the hot days of summer, that'll help them out a little bit. This Reds offense is that good. That'll help them out a little bit. That said, the underlying metrics are a concern. Paxton is not as good as this ERA. Frankie Montas, 4.20 ERA. Underlying metrics slightly higher than that. Pretty average. He started off looking like he might be a little bit better. At this point, does seem to be nothing more than an average pitcher, which isn't bad. The Reds, need all the healthy arms they can get at this point, but especially with Lodolo, who's one of their best guys coming down. It's all Dodgers. There's really nothing more to say than that. This is one, though, and I alluded to this earlier. Well, the Dodgers are big favorites, and they should be big favorites. The model says they might be a little favored by a little bit too much. We've got them winning 64% of the time. The market has them at 66% of the time. That said, I'm not running to back the Reds at this price. This is kind of where I expect the numbers to go for most big favorites eventually, where the favorites are slightly overpriced and they're daring you to take the dog, and you're kind of saying, is there enough value? I don't know. That's why we have, again, the model to help us figure out, is there enough value? Right now, the answer to that is no for the Reds. But at least they're a dog that I consider a little bit more than some of the dogs we talked about earlier, because there might be some value in the fact that people think Paxton's better than he is. But in general, I don't want to fade the Dodgers unless the value is crazy. Same thing like I said with Scooble. Total market is spot on. But as always, folks, make sure you're shopping around. You might find a better total, a better money line price somewhere else. Make sure you've got multiple books in your portfolio. If you don't have an account you're there yet, BetUS is a great place to be. You can get a 125% bonus on your first ever 3 deposits. Sign up today. That link is in the show description.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
And then wrapping us up here with the Rockies and the Giants, mid-50s for this one. Slight breeze out or across. Doesn't really matter with that park, the way the wind swirls. You can never really tell exactly what's going to happen. Anyway, going to play fairly pitcher-friendly for Ryan Feltner and Kyle Harrison. Feltner, not as bad as that 5.20 ERA. Definitely inflated because of course. FIP and XFIP both in the upper 3s. Very decent. If he continues to pitch like this, he might actually end up on the right side of average. Kyle Harrison, very solid, 3.42 ERA. His is lower because he's pitching a lot of his games in a pitcher-friendly ballpark. That makes sense. That's what you'd expect as well. So both of these guys are kind of similar, and their ERAs are diverging because of the parks they pitch in. It kind of makes a lot of sense. It's kind of exactly what you would expect. Neither one is great. Neither one is terrible. Both are very respectable, very solid, okay pitchers. Reliever-wise, we've given the Giants the edge. Offensively, the Giants have the edge, not because they're good, but because the Rockies' offense is terrible. They did just come off of a great series against the Padres, and I think they've won now 7 straight games. It's quite a story. The Rockies were never as bad as that record was. We talked about that the same thing. We didn't talk about it explicitly with the Rockies, but we did with the Marlins at the start of the season. Teams are never as bad as they look in their terrible, terrible, terrible streaks. That doesn't mean the Rockies are as good as winning 7 in a row, though. They've gotten some lucky breaks. That doesn't necessarily mean they can't continue it here against the Giants. It just means they weren't as bad as the whatever they were, 10-30 or whatever, 8-28 or whatever it was. They're still not a very good team. We have to continue to put all the day together. The idea that a team is hot doesn't really work great in baseball, especially because so much of that matters for the starting pitcher. If they were going up against Logan Webb here, I would say that's probably going to come to an end. Kyle Harrison, maybe they got a shot to win it. I'm not saying I think they do, but it's not completely implausible. This is another game where the Giants, like the Dodgers, are big favorites. They should be big favorites. I think they might be favored a little bit too much. That doesn't mean I'm running to play the Rockies, but definitely these late 2 games here, I think the favorites are getting maybe a little bit too much love, maybe not enough love for the favorites in some of the earlier ones. But we've got the Giants winning this 63% of the time, or 60% of the time, whereas the market is 63%, so we're off about 3%. Not enough to run to back the Rockies, but there might be a play here, especially in the morning when you look at the first 5 markets. Maybe a Rockies first 5 could be advantageous. Maybe an underplay. The market's at 7.5. The model says 7. Maybe a first 5 under. There's a couple of different ways we could look. We'll see if there's an official play. I have to think there will be come morning on Dub Club, but again, check that out. Link in the show description to see what we're doing exactly. I'm thinking Rockies are under or some combination, but nothing for sure yet. Again, Discord chat, more picks, A grades, play of the day, all sorts of summaries, All sorts of great benefits over on Dub Club. If you're over there, we really appreciate your support. If not, check it out. Just kind of play the day only package available if you're looking for just that, but if you're looking for the whole kit and caboodle to be a very well-informed, educated bettor, a bunch of information and tools at your disposal on Dub Club. Again, as always, link in the show description. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate that. As always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.